Welcome to Dammahadaya once again. So Dammahadaya is the gift to you, is the gift to all of you brought by the pioneer Buddhist channel of Sri Lanka, the Buddhist TV. So Dammahadaya is a discussion, I would like to call it a knowledge discussion, where we, get into the depths of Buddhism, maybe deep Buddhism and maybe not, maybe how we can apply Buddhism to our lives, to lead good lives, and Buddhist concepts and all that. So usually we have a very good resource person with us, and today's resource person is, of course, no stranger to you, but for all this, for the sake of all the viewers who are with us today, I would like to introduce him to you. He is Mr. Vipula Wanigasekera. Mr. Vipula Wanigasekera, the Director General of Sri Lanka Tourism. So with him as a resource person, we thought of selecting a theme, something like In Search of Truth. So, sir, when they say, the term truth comes to my mind, I recall the truth mentioned by the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths. That is what all of us as Buddhists know, and that is what comes to our mind. So when you consider the Four Noble Truths, that starts with suffering. First I thought I just initiate it like this. Why? Why did Buddha identify suffering and called it a truth?
Once again, it's a pleasure to be here. It appears that I'm becoming a regular resource person to the Buddhist channel, and I'm honored for that. As you know, suffering is one of the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha has mentioned. Now, one needs to be a little careful when you use this word suffering. Now, suffering is the word in English, and it means dissatisfaction or unhappiness or stress or anything to that effect. But dukkha, which the Buddha has described, encompasses a wider spectrum of activities and areas, and that includes, if I may use dukkha, which is called the normal pain and difficulties, physical or emotional. And then you have viparinama dukkha, which is caused by the nature of impermanence. Everything is subject to change, and that results in dukkha. And the third one is somewhat subtle, what they call the samkhara dukkha, which is something like one element is contingent upon another, the dependence of another. That also leads to suffering. So there, the dukkha that Buddha describes is exactly suffering. So this word suffering will not be sufficient to elaborate what dukkha means. Now, what is important here is that if you look at these desires, the desires are also called dukkha, because if you say kama tanha, the desires arising out of your senses, and if you, whatever the way you look at it, any element that anyone who is going after kama tanha or tanha arising out of your five senses, it leads to dukkha. Sometimes the desire to achieve something. So until someone achieves that, there is suffering. Although you wouldn't admit, you will call it an ambition, you will call it a goal, you will call it a, something to be achieved in your lifetime. But until you reach that, there is enormous suffering. Probably you don't admit it, but that is a fact. And even after having achieved whatever you have been desirous of achieving, then something else arises. And that's the nature of life. And that again causes dukkha. And bhavatanha, which is perhaps, I think, often misunderstood. There are many scriptures that describe bhavatanha, is that your tanha too exists. But I think bhavatanha is a very simple connotation which says your desire to maintain the status quo. You see, if you have a job, if you have a position, if you have wealth, that is to retain them with you. And that is simply what the bhavatanha is. You don't want anything to happen to your belongings. It's and people who are so much attached to their mundane gains is bhavatanha. Then vibhavatanha, which is even more subtle. There again, there's a misperception that a lot of scriptures try to explain. Vibhavatanha is the desire for non-existence. I haven't heard of anything like that. But in simple language, vibhavatanha is your desire to reject. You don't like to meet some people. You don't like to talk to some people. You don't like certain situations. You don't like to be blamed. You don't like to be humiliated. So you reject. So there is a desire to reject. So all that leads to what? It's a suffering inside. It's something burning inside. And that is what Buddha described as suffering. But having said all that, there is a very key element in the word suffering, and that's why Buddha identified it as one of the Four Noble Truths, because suffering itself is not bad, because suffering is essentially the driving force for someone to go in search of something that will make him or free from this state of suffering. It becomes eventually a driving force or some kind of it entices someone to go after a particular path to see if there is some truth which is beyond suffering. So suffering itself is not a bad thing, because it helps you at some point of time.
Okay, so while answering this first question of mine, sir, about suffering, you just happen to say, happen to explain kamatanha, bhavatanha and vibhavatanha, and you just happen to say that people interpret, or in some books also, like we see that those terms have been given different meanings, and what you explained is different here. So do you think that language can misguide the explorer or the seeker of truth?
Most certainly. I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the language has emerged as a means of communication, or very simply to describe what is being experienced through five senses.
True.
Okay, that is very simple explanation.
Yeah.
And secondly, a language is something that has emerged to describe an experience from a person's point of view. Now, where is the truth? The truth is definitely beyond five senses, because the five senses is the one that creates this illusion. So it is definitely beyond the five senses if someone is going after the truth. And if someone is desirous of seeing the truth, it's definitely beyond the five senses. And secondly, the person, if you look at the state of nirvana or the truth that the Buddha has described, that there is no person. There is no thinker behind the thought, or there is no observer behind what is observed, or even there is no experiencer. So there is no person here. But the language has been created by the people to describe this person and the person's experience. But when there is no person, you don't need the language. So the point is that because People are so much indulged in the language in your day-to-day communication. You, even if you want to meditate, even if you want to go through a mental process, you still use the language in your mindset, you know.
Yes.
Even if you meditate, you use the language to meditate. But here what is important is to find out whether there is a language of the heart, the language of the feeling.
I would like to interrupt you, sir, because you said even during meditation, which is very true. I thought, like I would say for the viewers to hear, sometimes, you know, when we meditate, say Anapanasati, we just happen to think, I breathe in, I breathe out, the words.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
please continue.
So this is the damage that a language can cause. The language itself, therefore, becomes a preventive factor, because you always tend to use the language in your mind as well. You definitely need language in your day-to-day life, but the language itself becomes now the word suffering, which is not really dukkha. You know, it's because, you know, these words have been created to describe a particular experience. But if you are looking for an experience which you have not hitherto experienced, therefore then the language is not going to help you. So the language itself becomes a barrier, certainly. But nevertheless, you know, as in at mundane levels, certainly you need the language to communicate. There's
Yes,
no doubt about
definitely,
it.
yeah.
Even when it comes to this suffering, Buddha has described various sukkhas like Ati Sukha, Anana Sukha, as a person, you know, to be free from debts, you know, all that it is described. But finally, when you are getting out of this sansaric process, it is the person, you know, you have to do away with this mindset of a person. There is a person that exists.
Yeah.
So there is no person. Then there can't be a language either.
Yes.
So that's how I look at language. Just as much as it is useful to communicate, it also becomes a preventive factor when someone wants to see something that he has not hitherto seen before.
Yes. So when we discuss these sort of things, like our viewers might think, if not for language, I mean, then what should we do?
Well, let me put it this way, that I didn't mean certainly, you know, suddenly you stop talking, stop writing and stop listening. That's not what I meant.
Yeah, definitely, yes.
But this, your ultimate realization is something definitely beyond language. And it is something that the language will not be able to describe, because the language can only describe what is experienced by a person and by the five senses. But if you are going beyond five senses, if you are looking for an experience beyond five senses, it's like the thought process.
Yeah.
Now say if you are observing your thoughts, you don't need the language. Say if your meditation is focused on observing thoughts, then there's another language that is working within, and you don't have to use your own language for that. Now say if someone is speaking in several languages, which language do you possibly choose
to meditate?
To meditate, you know, it's something like that.
Yeah.
So that's what I believe is how one has to look at the language. And having said that, you must also remember that Buddha lived long time ago, and during Buddha's time, things were never written. They were not placed in black and white.
Yeah.
And all he said was, I remember in some of the sutras it is mentioned, or this what Buddha's word in one of the occasions, he has said, I teach only one thing, that is suffering and end of suffering. And then in another occasion he has said, in my 40th year of the service to the, I haven't taught anyone anything. I haven't taught. So what he was referring to was, I have not given anyone a knowledge. So through language you essentially give the knowledge, but what is required is the wisdom, and to see the reality, and to see this illusion. You don't need a language for that.
True, definitely. Now, Serge, you just happened to say during our discussion that the truth is definitely beyond the five senses. So, if the truth is beyond the five senses, do you think it's easy or is it difficult to attain Nibbana, the goal of all Buddhists?
All right. Now, there are two schools of thought on this matter. Some are advocating that reaching Nirvana is a step-by-step approach, and you need to start treading a path towards Nirvana. And they say also you need to practice Sila, and then you go for concentration, which is Samadhi, and then you will reach Prajna, and therefore you will be able to reach Nirvana eventually. And this notion implies that reaching Nibbana is a very difficult task, and you have to travel in samsara, and they are also saying that you need to collect kusal and do away with akusal, and then you will be eligible for
Nibbana.
the entrance to Nibbana. Then there's another school of thought who say the Nirvana is already here, it's in you. And so much so, the recent scholars, they are even explaining that they go to the extent of saying that you are already enlightened. You are enlightened, but the problem is you are unenlightening yourself all the time. You see, it's another creative way of saying it. You are enlightened because this truth is within you always, and you need to discover this. And
I didn't quite make it. Can you just explain it a bit more?
Well, let me put it this way. If this illusion is created by a flow of thoughts,
Yes.
and the mind wouldn't allow you to go out of this illusion, it will always want the self to create this person, because it is the person who experience the five senses.
Yes.
And the mind wants it.
Sure.
But if you are going in search of the truth, then you have to find the state which is beyond the five senses. But the mind wouldn't let you do that.
All right.
Yeah. As long as you have this person with you, which is caused by the mind again,
Yes.
then the mind replenishes itself, and then the whole thing continues.
Okay.
What happens is that within you, if you see that this is just an illusion, the five senses, because I happen to be having this human feature, and therefore the humans are expected to live up to certain. But there are two things here. One is, as a human being, you have created a person with the attachment to body and mind. So therefore there is a person that exists, which itself is an illusion, because there is no person. It's also a thought process. Then secondly, on top of the person, whom we call the thinking man, like icing of a cake, we have created a personality, that is, to which family you were born and how you were brought up, to which school you have gone, and what is the position you are holding, and what's the wealth you have. This is the icing of a cake. So you have a person, on top of that you have a personality. Now that is a bigger illusion, because that also doesn't exist. Now here the person doesn't exist, then the icing, that also doesn't exist.
Okay.
So you need to go back and look inside. Where is this person? Say, we are saying that, mind distracts you. Mind governs the day. Mind controls. But then you need to ask yourself, who observes that? There is someone who observes that as well, no? If the mind does all that, there has to be something that observes that happening. Now, who is that someone who observes? Now, that is the question that you need to ask yourself. In other words, you need to keep this self-inquiry. You keep asking yourself this question, who observes this? There is suffering. caused by a thought, and then you feel it. Now, who feels this? And who sees the thought coming in and causes all this? And that will perhaps enable people to see what is happening within you. In which case, as Buddha said, I have conquered the world, you know. The world is all here. It's not something out there. So you're seeing the truth also happens within you. So that's why I said everything is in you already. So you only need to discover this. So therefore you are an enlightened person. It's just that every moment, every second, you are enlightening yourself. So therefore you don't see it. So that's another way of presenting this. So therefore, to answer the question whether it is difficult or whether it is easy, it's yes and no. Because it is subtle, people say it is deep. Therefore it is difficult. But just because something is subtle does not mean that it is difficult either. Because you only need to untangle this. Because it's already in you.
Okay, it's already in you. I think, as you said, it's a very encouraging way of just putting it across. It's already in you. And you have to realize it. So, thank you very much for that, sir. Now, if I ask you, what actually could be the misperceptions that deviate people from the truth or from the right path?
There are so many. First of all, the concepts, the ideas, the opinions, and brought about by various people. And therefore, the moment you come to a conclusion, well, this is the way to go, then you get yourself stuck in a mud. That is the biggest mistake, because you are deluded by a particular version and say this is the way to go. And that prevents you from keeping an open mind all the time. The self